It was very confusing. And you think you're saying the right thing, and later somebody that knows you will tell you that what you said really wasn't so good.
She would get to the point where I would tell her something and she would have to ask me again because she would have forgotten. We would be going to an appointment. She would ask me 4 or 5 times, where are we going? Things of that nature. Now it's less and less every day. Like I told her son Jeff, she's with us every day, more and more. You know, the memory is a lot better.
I first became aware there was a real problem with mercury from a patient in my practice. She asked if she could have white teeth, and I said sure, and took out the silver fillings. I didn't do it with any protection or anything like that, but she's still a patient of mine, but she recovered from multiple sclerosis. And so I've never had a patient recover from multiple sclerosis, so I said, boy, that's really interesting, but it's anecdotal. Is there evidence in the scientific literature that MS, for example, is linked to mercury? Yeah, absolutely, has been for years. Subaru did a lot of the studies. There are a whole host of brain diseases that are linked to mercury epidemiologically. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, MS, autism, and acrodynia are all brain diseases, and that they're all linked to mercury.
When he was first diagnosed, his memory was so bad. I mean, like I said, he would ask me questions and I'd answer, and he'd ask me the same thing and I'd answer, and he'd ask me the same thing and I'd answer, and it's going. And you know what, I'd begin to worry about whether he'd, you know, find his way or remember to do things, or, you know, like turn the stove off, and there was a couple times he didn't, and it was very stressful. I mean, both for him, because he knew he had a problem, but he didn't really know what to do about it. And it was stressful for me, worrying about him and what would happen when I was at work. And you know, so it was a time of immense stress for both of us. And when he got better, it was such a relief. It was, it's hard to say, but we felt blessed. You know, God had guided us, and we'd been able to solve the problem, and I'd had a husband again that I didn't have to worry about, and we were companions again, and, you know, just were able to function.
I had no mind. I couldn't process anything, and my retention was 1.5 seconds. Disability was given to me within 2 hours. The assessment was made. I failed every test, and my IQ was 57. I was mildly retarded. According to science, I shouldn't be here. So I'm privileged. I'm privileged to be alive every day and enjoy life. And I'm not ill. I do have my bouts going back and forth to the hospital, but I can think, I can function, and I feel at peace.
Many patients come into me and say, well, my other dentist said there's no research, there's no science behind the problem with mercury fillings. They say there's nothing wrong with it. The ADA has proof that it's safe. Well, the real truth is there is no proof of safety. The ADA says 150 years of use is proof. I don't buy that. I've gotten to know scientists in the IOMT from around the world. Mats Hansen from Sweden, who was instrumental in bringing the lay public awareness to mercury in dentistry, and helped the Swedish government change their policies. In fact, I have a book here that was published in 1992 with over 12,000 citations of mercury in the science. And don't tell me there's no research. It's just a fallacy.
The FDA has failed on Vioxx, failed on an awful lot of issues, and allow something like mercury, which is 100 times more neurotoxic than lead, to be put in our mouths and to put in vaccines. It's ridiculous.
One of the first things that I thought would be great if I could just understand what was causing it. And I never dreamed I'd be able to put it all together, especially when there's so many people out there with degrees that can't put it together. The advantage I had was that I had Alzheimer's trying to start in on me, so I had something to work with that they don't have. So then I went from knowing what was causing it, I went from that to being able to understand how it's causing it. The reason that it affected me was because the frozen custard contains ethyl vanillin, which is distilled from eugenol. And it's an oxidizer, and it oxidizes the metals that are needed by our metalloproteins. And then the metals wind up in the beta amyloid plaque in the brain.
I just couldn't think anymore, and I wanted to die. And so I called my parents to the table, and my son, I said, you know, I'm very sick. I feel the life spirit leaving my body, and if I'm giving myself 2 weeks to find out what's wrong with me. If somebody can't find out what's wrong with me, I'm going to end my life in a way, and I want you to support me. And So I went online and I started Googling my symptoms, and I kept coming across a woman's name, Val, and finally I found a way to contact her, and I called her. I said, please, I'm dying. Please, can you contact me and help me? She gave me her number, and I called her back, and she told me to go take she said, go take your temperature. Do you have a thermometer? And I took my temperature. My temperature was 92. She says, and I did some other tests, and she was talking to me, and she told me, you need to go to the doctor tomorrow. I want you to get a TSH, a free T3, and a free T4, and a cortisol test, and you call me back. She says, I can tell you right now, you're severely, you have severe hypothyroidism, and you're in adrenal failure. I went to my doctor. My doctor thought I was crazy. She said, you don't have that. I said, I want this test done. She said, who told you that? I said, it was a dog groomer from Hurricane, West Virginia. The doctor did the test, and we got the call here, and she says, you need to come in now. And I went in and I said, well, what is it? She says, you're dying. You're dying, you're very sick. And that's how my healing started. I was so happy when I had the diagnosis of hypothyroidism that, yeah, there's a reason, there's a pill that can make me better. So she started me on a drug called Synthroid. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm not gone crazy. There's a reason for the season, and I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna feel better. Well, the truth of the matter was, when I was in Synthroid, I got sicker and sicker. I got to where I had to crawl. I couldn't even walk. My thinking really went out the door, and my temperatures were dropping, and I couldn't sleep at all. And I was really suffering at that time from sleep deprivation. So after 3 months of that and getting sicker and sicker, I asked her if we could change the medicine and tried a desiccated natural thyroid or Armour thyroid, and she agreed. She says, we have to do something. And the amazing thing was, a week after taking desiccated thyroid, I was able to sleep for the first time in a long period of time, which of course made me feel a lot better. And then I didn't have to walk with a cane anymore, and each day my thinking started coming back, and my hair was starting to come in, little tufts of hair everywhere, and the eyebrows that had all fallen out were starting to grow in. And I started to think again, and I started to be able to write again, and it took a period of time to get better, but I was very happy, and I felt that I was on the road to recovery.
A real nice study was published in a medical journal called Geriatrics, and they took this group of older men with normal thyroid levels, not on thyroid, and they gave them thyroid, and then they tested them. Those that were on the highest dose of thyroid was the ones that had the improvement of memory, improvement of cognition, improvement of well-being. Those that had low levels or were treated with a placebo, did not see any improvement at all. Great study, again showing there's beneficial effects to optimizing their thyroid, even in older folks, to help improve memory, cognition, metabolism. Thyroid is a hormone that affects all organs, all tissues, all systems. And when the level is low, which we consider normal, low means it's you're just as low as everyone else your age. That low is not optimal for your health and well-being. Optimizing those levels tends to improve. And the medical studies consistently show that.
she had a lot of emotional trauma, physical trauma, and prior to the visit they had her on Dementia, which is an Alzheimer's drug, which actually made her worse. So I think her son's thought was that if there's something that could be done for her, we needed to be doing it. Before she came, she had been put on coconut oil, which is an interesting, new, and there's some research on it now, treatment for people who are losing their memory. And she had already become somewhat better from the coconut oil therapy.
So NASA put me on 10 milligrams of Lipitor, and I went home and was normal for 6 weeks. And they advised me to get a blood cholesterol done and some enzymes done at the end of 6 weeks. And my cholesterol then was 155, so I was thrilled to death. I was just like every other physician. I thought that statins were the best thing in the world. I finally had a club with which I could really hammer cholesterol, and I was impressed. It was only the next day that my wife saw me aimlessly wandering about the front yard, and she knew something was seriously wrong. I did not know who she was. I did not know my home. And I was having my first episode of transient global amnesia. 8 weeks later, I had my worst episode. And at this time, I became a 13-year-old high school student. And I did not know my wife again. This time I retrograded 48 years of my life. My entire adult life had been eradicated. I was 13 years old. And when they told me I was married, I laughed pretty hysterically. And when they told me I was a doctor, I couldn't have doctored a mouse. I mean, it was incredible to be in that state where you know you're 13 years old, but they tell you all these things that can't possibly be true. And that lasted for 12 hours. And again, when it stopped abruptly. And I joined in the conversation, and I said, I don't care what any of you guys say, that was a drug reaction. And it was due to my Lipitor. And this is what triggered my research into the statin drug use.
There's a documentation of films of me at really pathological, dysfunctional, non-speaking. I am so grateful to have the quality of life that I have, and it's worth all the changes that I have to make every day. This is Gary Null's protocol. Even though it's 20 or 30 pills a day, and many people with severe brain problems have dysphagia. I have trouble swallowing. So I've had to, as I've slowly become better, I went from taking a gallon of Poland Spring and chucking down the vitamins to integrating food in blenders and making it easier for myself.
One of the problems that some of my clients have are low-level chronic infections. So they may have a low-level herpes infection, or they may have a low-level fungal infection. Toenail fungus, for example, can be very common, and people just basically ignore it. So what do doctors do if somebody presents with an inflammatory reaction to something? They give them corticosteroids, dexamethasone, or cortisone or cortisol to suppress their inflammatory response. Well, if you do that long enough, you develop a whole series of secondary problems that play into Alzheimer's disease, when the ideal approach is to reverse the problem in the first place and eliminate the inflammatory exposure. Common sources of inflammation would be wheat, milk, corn, yeast exposure. Eggs can be an issue. Actually, for many people, it's their most common foods. The foods that they really love, that they eat all the time. That regular exposure sensitizes their immune system to it and creates an inflammatory response. So if you can eliminate those inflammatory responses, lower the level of inflammation, then the brain can recover and start to have a normal metabolism.
What advice would you give to other people who are having memory issues?
I think the main thing would be that they keep their minds set on doing the things they like to do and talking about the things they like to talk about, and to keep in touch with people or friends that will encourage you to talk about the things that you're really interested in, and they can be a big help to you. I think family and friends are very vital to your mental health and your mental ability to keep on a higher level of thinking.